Good afternoon, everyone. It's not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to cosplay. No, not cosplay. Why would you spend $33 million on cosplay? I mean, Rand. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday's afternoon lecture. Today we'll be discussing upcasting and downcasting. And in saying that, I realized I haven't shared my screen with you yet. All right, let's share the screen. Let's start the slides. There we go. You should be able to see it on my screen. Just get back to where you guys are. All right. So today we'll be discussing upcasting. We've discussed it informally on Monday, but today we're going to discuss it a bit more formally. So the focus of today is going to be upcasting. I hope we're going to have enough time to discuss downcasting as well. Otherwise, we'll just do that tomorrow morning when we discuss enumeration as well. So, purpose and outcomes, upcasting, what is it? How is it used? So, you'll probably remember the UJ module example. We used it yesterday in the tutorial, and Mr. Cottrell used it when we discussed inheritance. So, you should still be familiar with this example. So, you've got the UJ module, which is an abstract base class. And then you've got three derived classes, which is Informatics 1A, Business Management 1A, and Mathematics 1A. Your favorite subject. Well, it should be 1B as well. So how would we normally deal with this? And the slide says this is tedious, do not. It refers to the fact that we know a better way to do this now. So normally to instantiate the object, you'll instantiate three arrays of type Informatics 1A, Mathematics 1A, Business Management 1A. You'll have three different integers tracking the size of these arrays, and then you'll have three segments to check which one of the classes you're using. So if you have the fact that you've got segment A, if it's a informatics class, you'll read the array, you will do a for loop, get the information for the array itself, and then continue until you've filled up that for loop. Same for segment B, which is for business management. Same for segment C for mathematics. Now, why is this bad? What about it? You can tell me what's bad about it.
Repeating
go
code.
back to this one. That is correct. You're repeating code. It's tedious. Repeating code is tedious. It's called redundancy. You'll learn more about redundancy in 2A, but you're repeating the same thing. Now, in some instances, unfortunately, you will have to repeat some of the input, but it's the for loops you have to manage. It's the redoing the array sizes. It's how you're managing them specifically. It's unnecessary. So, what are we looking at? So let's look at it from a graphical viewpoint. We are basically doing the same code mostly again and again. This is like working with single variables all over again. And how many of you liked the traffic light example? I'm assuming you did the traffic light example in 1A. We had to keep track of every single grid or every single block in a single variable instead of using an array. It's not fun. It's once again, you're doing multiple values that you have to manually check. So it's a lot of if statements as well. So to address the issue of working with variables, we used an array, which makes it a lot more convenient for us. So can we do the same thing again? So you've got three variables here, and then variables.textbox. Can you do that? Think about it. This might be something fun for you. Just think about it. All right. So an array is the answer. So what are we trying to do? So we've got an example of three items here for Informatics 1A, Business Management 1A, Mathematics 1A. You've got three separate arrays or objects, essentially. what do we want? We want to put them into one array so that we can use them throughout our system. One array, which means we don't have to duplicate the code when we need to calculate semester marks or calculate final marks, or even capture the final marks or semester marks or exam marks, because all of them have those allocations. But can we? What do you guys think? Can we do this? Is there a catch though? Nothing can be this easy. There has to be a catch, right? Oh, the suspense is building. You already know the answer to this because we've already done it. We showed you this. So yes, you can do this, but there are a few limitations to an array itself, and you need to be aware of this. So when you look at the array, you did this in the first semester, an array cannot consist of multiple types. So what that's referring to is the fact that your array has an integer in one block, a boolean in the other block, double in the other block, and a string in the other block. Can you do that? Pretty sure you guys remember the answer to this. No, you can't. Well, not directly. There are ways in which you can, but it's not good. You shouldn't do this. This is because there's no relevance to one another. There's nothing they have in common. And that's the word you need to keep in mind. Common. It needs to be something common. You can convert the values when needed, but that's a lot more effort than just tracking individual values themselves. So, coming back to our singular array of multiple objects, Object Informatics 1A, Object Business Management 1A, and Object Mathematics 1A. Our classes, our derived classes. So how do we manage them? Why is this possible? So when we look at the UJ module object, we look at all of them in terms of the fact that they're all a UJ module. They have something in common. And if you look at what they have in common, you'll most likely see, wrong slide, sorry. You'll most likely see that they have functionality in common. So you've got calculate semester mark, you've got calculate final mark. So all of them will be using the base class implementation of calculate final mark. You've got calculate semester mark. You've got evaluated exam entrance, which will be based on the semester mark. And then you've got your first semester test, your second semester test, and your exam instance variables, which keeps track of your marks there. But with informatics, you've got practicals. Mathematics, you've got class test. And with business management, you've got assignments. So I want to find out from you now if you can see this. You can downcast into an array of type UJ module. Once I go into type UJ module, can I use practicals again? Can I input the practicals after upcasting them? Can I input class tests after upcasting Mathematics 1A to UJ module? And can I upcast Business Management 1A and access assignments after upcasting them? And the answer is no. Because once you upcast, it's assumed that that array is of type UJ module. And because those instance variables are not contained within UJ module, you will not have access to them. So you need to be very careful for that. Once you upcast an element, an object, once you upcast an object to the base class, you can't use the derived class specific functions. You can only use them if they are called within the functions that are common inside the UJ module. Now, why I say that is I'll show you an example a bit later on. It was a question from last night's tutorial as well about how to invoke a subroutine within one of these if the subroutine is not inside the UJ module. Right. So casting it up to UJ module allows you to use this array and then allows you to use the common functions. So the functions that are in the base class as well. So when we go to our code, when we look at our arrays, our 3 individual arrays, we can now remove them and replace it with one array. So you remove the need to track 3 individual array sizes. You remove the need to track 3 arrays themselves. All you need to track now is the number of modules you have. You will still have your 3 segments because you will still have to track whether it's informatics, business management, or mathematics in order to get the correct input into those sections. But dealing with that, we'll discuss that tomorrow when we have enumerations, because there's an easier way to deal with it. Right. So the first thing we do is we will first check the size of our modules. This can also be done dynamically, which I'll show you probably on Thursday's tutorial. Ms. Cottrell did it yesterday during his tutorial, but I'll only do it tomorrow on Thursday. That is tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow, Thursday. So we keep track of the number of objects we're going to put into this array. We check our choice in terms of which one of the modules we're going to be using. And there's a reason why we're using a number. So it says informatics 1, business management 2, and then mathematics 3. And that comes to enumerations. We have a numerical value for them because it's going to be very useful. So for now, we just consider the 3 options, test the case, and then we get the input for that specific option. So you've got your informatics, you get rid of the array itself, get rid of the for loop, you just take the input that you want. Then you've got finding out how many practicals. You still have to keep track of how many practicals you have because it is an informatics specific. What happens if I put any number in choice or in choose? You're referring to over here. It has to be one of the options that you're testing. Because remember, it's a select case. So you've got cases, you detect specific cases, and if it's not one of those cases, then it just won't execute one of the selects. So essentially, you'll be breaking your own program, which is something we'll discuss tomorrow as well, if we have time. Otherwise, we'll discuss it on Tuesday. I also kind of pointed to that on Monday when we said we'll do a error handling or exception handling. We have a try-catch statement. Right. So once you have achieved the object's information, so once you received all the information you need for the informatics object itself, that one specific object, then you can take that object and place it inside the UJ module array. So that is the upcasting itself. That's where the upcasting happens, because your UJ modules array is of UJ module type. So you're taking the informatics object and casting it up into the UJ module type for the array. So once it goes into this array, you won't be able to modify the practicals anymore or have informatics specific functions that you can execute. You will only be able to execute the common functions available. So upcasting, which is another piece of the puzzle, is determined by common factors. So if we look at the informatics one, just to give you more of a visual representation of what's actually going on, you're upcasting informatics A into UJ module. So you look at what is inside UJ module, inside informatics 1A, and you look at the common attributes. So if you look at informatics 1A, you'll see that you've got practicals, you've got informatics 1A, the function over here, and calculate PCM. So those are the things specific to informatics 1A, but it contains everything else as well. But when you talk about the UJ module, you're talking about things that are only represented inside the UJ module class. So that is semester test 1, semester test 2, the exam. And the functions you'll have access to is evaluate examination entrance or exam entrance, calculate final mark, calculate semester mark. But now, I want you to consider this. when you evaluate your exam entrance, would you calculate PCM and calculate semester mark inside this function? Okay, we've got one yes and one no. So let me ask you this. How do you determine if you qualify for the exam? What are the conditions that need to be true for Informatics 1B for you to get into the exam? You don't have to be 100% correct, but if you could just vaguely remember. Yes, semester mark and PCA. So your semester mark has to be above 40. No, above 30 this semester. So your semester mark has to be above 30%, and your PCM has to be above 50%. 50%. All right. So when we evaluate your exam entrance, it depends on PCM and SM. So inside evaluated exam entrance, you'll most likely call calculate semester mark, and you'll also most likely call calculate PCM. But now, because calculate PCM is inside informatics, you don't have direct access. But because evaluate exam entrance is a common function, you'll have access to it. And because in the derived class, we will use those two subroutines or those two functions, that derived class, that function, will have access to them. So you can still invoke those functions, but only if called within a common function. It will be a bit more clear when I show you the code for it, when we discuss it that way. So things for today is what is upcasting, when is upcasting permitted, and what does upcasting allow us to do. So let's go over to our code. So this is the same example from Monday morning. Maybe I should use the one from last night rather, because we can actually do two in one. So let's go. Let's just do it the old way. All right. So this is code I did last night for the tutorial. So those that did not attend the tutorial, we'll quickly run through this so that you can see what's going on here. So I'll just take it back to the original state, the one that we're all used to. We'll keep that as a must override for now. We will want this to be a function. Sorry, I wasn't planning on using this code now, so I just want to take it back to the original state so that you guys are aware of what's going on. All right, just have to call that ASM. Have it return a string. This is a function. No. And let's just comment this out for a second. Okay. Let's see. I think you're right. I have it as a string up here. All right, just need to quickly correct that. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense to you. You do that, that, and that. This is still SM function as integer. And we only did the two. So I needed maths and infos. All right. So as with the example, you still have your functions. So you've got your module name. You've got the module code. You've got the module name. But we're going to remove that because this is now student specific and not subject anymore. So you've got your semester test 1, your semester test 2, and your exam. We don't need the constructor. This is all fine and dandy. Then you've got your semester mark. You'll have a final mark as well. So let's add the final mark, which will be public function final mark. And how are we going to determine the final mark? Any of you know? You will take the exam mark plus the semester mark. And you will divide that by 2. Everybody happy with that? That's how you calculate your final mark. Take your semester mark, you add that to your exam mark, and you divide that by 2. Everybody happy with that? Okay. Now, to add, the next thing to add is our function. This will be an overridable function. And this is to determine our exam entrance. What will the return be? Are we going to have a string return? Are we going to have a Boolean return? Or are we going to have an integer return? What do you guys want? Boolean or string? String. Okay. You already see what I want to do. I'm assuming you already see what I want to do. All right. So the return here will be an if statement. 949 returns int. Shouldn't it be st2? You are right. Thank you for that. Right. So exam evaluation or evaluate exam entrance. How do we determine that? So firstly, we have to check our semester mark is above 30%. This is what we'll be using for the semester. So let's use the same values. And then if it is, we can return exam entrance granted. And if it is false, just at the end if it is false, then we will return or we should just add maybe you should study next year. All right. Let's face it, if you don't study, you're not going to pass. So as harsh as it sounds, if you fail, it probably means you didn't study. Right. Now it's the exam entrance. So you need 30% for your semester mark to get into the exam. And you need a minimum of 30% for your exam to pass. But keep in mind, your final mark still has to be above 50%. So even though all it does, it just gives you more room. the expression is it gives you more rope to hang yourself with. So it just gives you more chances, but your final mark still has to be above 50%. That will never change, or I hope not. Sick burn. It's not a burn, it's reality. If you don't study, you won't pass. It's not even false hope. Honestly, if you go into the exam with 50% semester mark, the chances are you're not going to do very well in the exam, because the exam is a theory exam. Okay, but we're getting off course here. Going off topic now. All right, so for the mathematics, we don't need the constructor anymore, so I'll just remove that for now. So we have our semester mark. We have our calculate class test average, which is a function used inside our semester calculation. So we've got the calculation of 40% class test as semester test 1, 40% semester test 2, and then 20% of the class test average. And then we have a function here that calculates the class test average for us and then returns the class test average. So do we need to do a final mark? No. Let's first discuss evaluate exam entrance. Do we need to override evaluate exam entrance inside our mathematics subject? Okay, we've got one person saying yes. We've got more people saying yes. My question to you now is the code going to be different? What is different? Tell me what is different. Why is the SM different? Are you talking about the specific value? So your exam entrance for maths is 50%. Let's say across the board, exam entrance for your semester mark is 30%. Let's go with that assumption. In this assignment, if you have a semester mark of 30%, you gain entrance to the exam. All right. Is the calculation to get exam entrance different? Do they use anything other than the semester mark to determine whether you get entrance into the exam? It's the same. So do we need to override the exam evaluation, the evaluate entrance exam inside our derived class? No, because the formula or the calculation is the same. And for the final mark, do we need to override the final mark? Is this calculation different for maths? No. Your final mark is your semester mark plus your exam divided, so 50-50 split. Right. So we're happy with mathematics. Is there anything we should add here? Is there anything else that needs to be added here? No. Perfect. Now let's go to our informatics. Informatics is slightly different. So for informatics, we've got a semester mark, we've got a practical average, and we've got a PCM. Now let's first go and calculate our PCM. So in this case, I'm going to make this private, and you'll understand why I'm making it private in a moment. So let's go and do our PCM calculation. So your PCM is, I'm just going to use a formula, I'm not going to use the one you have in your learning guide right now. So let's say your PCM is, what shall we make it? 40% your practicals and 60% your second semester test. I think that's a fair split. And then we'll make it 60% your second semester test, which is your practical semester test. And then we just need to kind of do an extra. Right. So your PCM mark is consists of 40% your practical average and 60% your semester test mark, second semester test mark, because that's the practical semester test. Now, do we need to override the evaluate exam calculation, exam entrance? Do we use a different formula to determine whether you get exam entrance or not? Yes, yes we do. So that means we will have to override it. Okay, so we override the exam entrance calculation. Just going to take that away. A string. And what is our output here? We've got an if statement. Our if statement will still be semester mark. If the semester mark is above 30%, then you still have the fact that you've got exam entrance. You can use the same wording as well. Else do not have entrance. Okay, so we check whether you have a semester mark above 30%, and we check whether your PCM is above 50%. Equal to. I have forgotten the. What's the what's the notation for and in VB again? Or is it just and? Ah. So you use different languages. All right. So we check whether our semester mark is 30 or above, which reminds me this formula needs to be equal to. And we check whether our PCM is and above. So would it be possible to modify it through the MyBase functionality? All right. So the thing here is you've got a string return from MyBase. So what you would most likely do, if this was a Boolean return, then you could have tested whether that specific MyBase returns a true or a false, because that will execute the semester mark, determine if the semester mark is above 30 or not, and then you can check the PCM separately. But that depends on the return type, because if you want to do it now and it's a string return type, you have to go and test that string to see whether that is the result of the MyBase function. Okay, we've got a question, or we've got a hand raised.
Sir?
Yes?
Okay, so evaluate exam entrance function in the main class. I just want to see what you did.
Yeah, there you go. So in the main class, what we're doing is we're testing to see if the semester mark is larger or equal to 30. If it is, then we return entrance granted. If it is not, then we say maybe you should study next year, in terms of you should actually study.
So, sir, will I be correct if I had made the evaluate exam entrance as abstract instead of? Would it be
If
correct, sir?
do you mean if you made it a must override? Okay, so if you made it a must override, then there is no computation. So, for example, if we do this, must override, must override, then all of this is red because then there's no calculations. So it doesn't want any calculations, which means every subject has to determine their own exam entrance evaluation. Now, for the case of mathematics, that means that you have to go and calculate it yourself, which we don't have. So that's why it's available, so that in case you don't use, if you use the general formula to determine whether you have a exam entrance or not, then you can use the one with the base class. Otherwise, you override it.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So we're running a little. I've got not a lot of time left, so I'm assuming Mr. Gottschall just answered that previous question now. So the overrideable keyword function, the base class, means that it is derived class. It must be override. No. So overrideable means you can override it if you need to override it. So if you look at mathematics doesn't override exam evaluation or exam entrance, evaluated exam entrance, because they're using the general formula for it. Informatics is overriding it because we use a PCM to determine if you have exam entrance as well, and not just the semester mark. So we've got an additional clause to you getting into the exam. We're getting granted access to the exam. Now, what I want to get to here is a display value, something that you guys will be using inside your practical for this week. So let's just go and quickly create a public must override function, just display, and that returns a string. Right. What this function does, did I delete it here? I deleted it here. What this function does, this function will determine, or will output the display you want from the specific class. So in this case, the return here will be the return of the exam evaluation. So return, let's say math, and to that we add the exam entrance evaluation. Why is it complaining? Because I made it private. Right. So this display function just outputs that specific value for us, but it calls and it invokes exam entrance. And then we'll have the same in informatics. I think I still have my display function here, and I removed it as well. And this one is for informatics, informatics 1B. We can have onto to the exam, and we can add something else as well. Let's go, we'll just add a space. And then what else can we add? What else can we add? Let's add the semester mark here. And let's add the PCM here as well. Right. Our return is just, once again, being called display, but it invokes the evaluate exam entrance and outputs the evaluation for us. So what we can do is already have a pre-programmed input for it. We don't need the constructors anymore, so that is fine. But what I did is for subject 1, I've got maths, and I've got for subject 2, I've got practicals, which just allocates a single practical and a single mathematics mark to that practical, and then upcast those practicals into the array. So if we look at it from the top, we've got our subject or subjects array as UJ module. So this array is of type UJ module, which is our abstract base class. I read my UJ module to 2. So I'm just going to test 2 subjects out here. And I'm coding it out by hand so that we can just evaluate and see if it's working correctly. Tomorrow we'll do it properly with a input and everything. Or on Thursday during the tutorial. We'll have more time there. So I declare a temporary array of type mathematics, and I declare a temporary array of type informatics. I create a class test of 1 and a practical of 1, and this is going to give me an error because those constructors don't exist. The default constructors. This is going to be bad programming practice. Need to read these arrays. It's going to give me, it's going to throw an error in a moment, so just bear with me, but it is going to throw an error. It's because we haven't redone these arrays. Just be aware of that. Wait, there's a way around that. Just remove that. That's not an array anymore. That's not an array anymore. Sorry, I'm running out of time, and I want you guys to see it working at least, so we'll do it the cheating way. All right. So we've got subject 1, which is maths. We've got subject 2, which is practical. So for our practical, we've got 100%. For our class test, we've got 100%. We upcast that into array. We then set our semester test 1 mark for our mathematics, our semester test 2 mark for mathematics, our semester test 1 mark for informatics, and our semester test 2 mark for informatics. So here is just a test calculation. So this is part of the test data. So in the code, I just tell myself that the expected output is supposed to be 60% for a semester mark for mathematics, and for informatics, it should be 90%, which is probably the average as well. And then if we take our base class, so if we potentially get these results, then we know it's our base class that is outputting the values for us and not the derived class. All right. Now, if we run this, it is going to break because of the calculate function over here. I did not keep time in mind with all of this code manipulation. So we'll just do that. Can't comment that out. comment that out. This will just be classes. Return. And over here, we'll do the same for practicals. Just comment this out. You're going to use the same code base tomorrow, so I'll show it to you properly tomorrow with input. I mean on Thursday. I just don't want to override functions right now. All right. So as you can see, we've got one array of subjects, which contains one mathematics and one informatics. Yes, I mean tomorrow, Thursday. One mathematics and one informatics subject. It calls display. Display comes from our UJ module, but is overridden or gets overrode by mathematics to output maths and then whether you have entrance, and by informatics with the evaluation. So by informatics, the evaluation and as well as our marks. So let's run this and see if it works. This also makes use of a multi-line text box. And it is going to break. Where is it going to break? It's going to break in our property statements. Should have just said continue. All right, here we go. And it breaks. Null reference exception. Yeah, I know where it's breaking though. It's because I'm trying to do this too quickly. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. You are right.
That's the new. Just show downcasting before you.
I'll do the downcasting tomorrow.
I'll just show them a brief introduction so they can start with the practical.
Is downcasting in the practical?
Yeah, downcasting's in the practical.
Okay. So this will not work, just to show you, and you've got your varying outputs. All right. So downcasting. When you do downcasting, you'll notice that subject 1, so let's just declare a temporary array here quickly. We've got temp, we call it temp math equals math. And if you all remember, we passed subject 1, which is mathematics, into slot 1 of the array. So you should be able to say that temp math equals subjects one, right? Will that work? It's throwing error. Why is it throwing an error? It's telling me object strict disallows implicit conversion from UJ module to math. So the problem here is you need to do a direct cast. The expression and then the type. So the expression is what you're passing, and then the type you are expecting. It's math. So it's going to attempt to pass this array or this item into this item of math type math. Look at, there's a side conversation going on there. So this is downcasting. So upcasting is passing it directly into the array over there, which is allowed. Downcasting, you have to say specifically what you're downcasting to. So in this case, you're stating that you're downcasting into math. Now keep in mind, if I put type 2 in here, it will allow this during the code itself, but when you run it, it will throw you an error. So I'm going to run this, and it's going to tell you that the informatics object you're trying to pass along, because object 2 is informatics, won't pass as maths. So that's going to break. So before you do a direct cast, before you do a downcast, you first have to check whether it is of the right type. And the way you do that is you do an if statement. If type of, and then you pass the object. So you're looking for the type of the subjects. In this case, you'll go subject 2 is math, and you can pass it along. Subjects 2. Then you can pass it along. So we can give a message box here that says not type math, and it will throw me, and it will just give me the message, but it won't crash itself. Otherwise, if it is of type math, then we can pass it. Sorry, this needs to be the passing. If it is of type math, it should allow. If it is not of type math, it should not allow. So message box, and we'll just say not type math. So over here, we'll just run this. Just putting a debug there so you can see it pop up. So right now it's checking type of. It's trying to see if subject, can I show this? Yes. If subject 2 is math, and it's telling us that it's false. So subject 2 right now, can I open the subject type? Yes. Subject 2 right now, as you can see, contains practical. So this is of type informatics. So type of subject 2 is informatics, which is not maths. Returns a false, which means that it will return the message box telling us that it is wrong. The else message box, and there you have it, not type maths. So that is downcasting. So before you downcast, make sure you check the type, that it's of the correct type. Sorry that I'm doing this a bit quickly now. Ms. Cottrell and I just want to show it to you before tomorrow, so that you kind of have it for your practical for Friday. We'll discuss it more thoroughly tomorrow. And in the touch, we'll explore an entire application from start to end of how to do it properly inside the if statements and everything. So we'll do the full program with inputs, with enumeration and everything as it should be when it is actually implemented. All right. So sorry that it went slightly over time here. Unfortunately, to show it all, it took a bit longer than I expected it will. But if you do have any questions, you can ask in Discord. Otherwise, I'll still be around after the recording for a while, so you can still ask. For those that are watching the recording, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat channel. If it's anything you ask during a tutorial, you can post it in the tutorial channel, and we'll handle it during the tutorial session tomorrow. Right. I hope you guys have a lovely evening further, and best of luck for your practical.